is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Three Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined by Derek Young from K-State Online, Cole Manbeck, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury. And we are here to break down just a wonderful, wonderful 42-35 loss to the Iowa State Cyclones, in which K-State gave up 5 touchdowns of 60-plus yards. I think Jalen Noel is still running somewhere and is still probably breaking tackles as I say this. And as such, look, I know that all of you are hitting the Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon and the 360 vodka to wash away that one already. I don't really need to tell you this, but if you have not yet, make sure that you go get stocked up with Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon, 360 vodka from our friends at Holiday Distillery. Great K-State folks who support our pod, so please support them as well. We appreciate everything that they have done for us throughout the year, including throwing an awesome tailgate, which I know sounded like a really good time, probably the highlight of the day for those of you that actually braved the snow and braved the cold to sit through that thing. But Cole, you want to tell us about? Why don't you tell us about the tailgate? Let's start on a high note. Tell us about what the tailgate experience was like with Holiday and Company.
Tailgate was awesome. Got over there at like 4:30. I saw Wyatt and team actually roll into town in the 360 vodka truck as we were arriving into Manhattan around 2:00 on Saturday, and they threw a kick-ass tailgate. Met a lot of great K-State fans that came over. Probably didn't get to everybody that I would have liked to have gotten an opportunity to talk to, so I'm sorry if we didn't get to chat much with all of you, but some great bourbon. I know I had a couple. Vanessa even made it over, the first lady of Three Ma, as she likes to now coin herself. Very arrogant, if you ask me. So she arrived around 5:30. Then we had Curry Sexton show up. Everyone was asking, where's Curry? Curry shows up. Man, then we had the real star power. Curry brought over Ryan Mueller. Zach Nemechek showed up. We had some former K-State football players over there. We had a great time chatting it up with those guys. And the snow was coming down heavy. It was just kind of surreal just to take it all in. But bourbon kept everybody warm. Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. And man, Wyatt had quite the spread and set up there with some amazing drinks. Vanessa, he made Vanessa a drink, and she was like, "Wow, it's so good." So it was awesome. A lot of people asked where you two were, so I told her they understood DUI was in the box. I didn't have an explanation for John. I didn't know where he was. So,
I mean, I'm still looking at. I got a bunch of stuff unpacked, and then I had to go get the rest of the stuff out of my apartment late afternoon yesterday, and now it's just all plopped back here. So the more I unpack, the more stuff is still here. So. If someone wants to help me come unpack, then, maybe I could have gone to the game. You kidding? You tell me I should have gone to that? You tell me I should have gone to that? I should have sat through that?
Maybe things are different if you're there. Maybe Iowa State jumps. Maybe Matt Campbell sees you and you get spooked. I don't know.
I'm done talking. Let's start there. I'm done saying shit about Matt Campbell. Like, why? He's the only reason Chris Klieman has not lost 4 in a row to Matt Campbell is because you pulled out a 1-point win in Ames last year against a 4-win Iowa State team. I'm done with that, man. I mean, I'm kind of putting a moratorium on talking anything to Iowa State right now. I mean, look, like, obviously K-State is, the history of the program, it's not even close. Over the last, we addressed the other day, over the last 30 years, about a third of K-State seasons have been 10-plus win seasons. But dude, how else you want to try and explain what's going on here? He's got something. Campbell's got something on Klieman. I'm at that point. I'm sorry. That was pathetic. That was absolutely pathetic on Saturday.
The tackling sure was. The defense sure was. I guess, even in like halftime, it felt like a little bit of a fluke because they had 2 or 3 really good plays that were responsible for the 14 points. And besides that, Kansas State controlled that game. And that even extended to the second half. I mean, it's going to be funny when, Stats Award Parker puts out, the success rate difference when it's going to look like Kansas State dominated that game because their success rate still is miles better than Iowa State. So it's like, did we really get beat that bad? It's going to be crazy how significantly it looks like Kansas State controlled that game just because They ran 67 more plays. Their success rate, I think, is like 30 points higher. But at the end of the day, if you can't tackle and if you can't prevent the explosive, none of that truly matters. I've honestly never seen a football game unfold like that. So, and to call it a fluke would be, at halftime, would be correct. To call it a fluke after the game would not. You just couldn't tackle. You refused to tackle almost. And at the end of the day, you're giving six plays over 60 yards or whatever it was. And Iowa State scores more points than they run plays. I think it was over 15 yards per play. Just ridiculous numbers that are kind of just new to college football. I don't know that there's a whole lot of national people that have looked into how that game unfolded, but it would absolutely blow their mind. And Kent State's offense, though not pretty at times, and even when it's good, it doesn't always feel good. And I know Cole's made this point. You tell me before the game he scored 35 points, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think the offense was fine. I think if there's somebody who should be more mad at the defense than almost anybody, it's Will Howard, because Will is taking a lot of crap from a lot of fans again, which, I mean, that's a whole, we can talk about that later on, but some of the discourse again around Will Howard as he sits here probably at the end of his K-State career is just ridiculous. I mean, it's turned into a Bruce Weber sort of situation where nobody wants to recognize anything positive that's ever happened for the guy and what he has done. But, I'm not saying he was great. He probably should have thrown like 3 interceptions. But that's if we're being honest, that's been a lot of what this year has been for him. But he did make some nice throws in the snow. But the defense has been pretty solid this year. Like, I guess if you want to say like fluky sort of defensive performance, I guess in the snow, didn't really seem to affect Iowa State that much. Like, they weren't great, but they weren't giving up 60 plus yard touch. I mean, run down this list. It is ridiculous. I was looking at this morning because I wanted to double check the 60 plus yard thing. 71 yard touchdown run on the first play of the game. That's another thing. Can I say something? 2 trips in a row to Manhattan, Iowa State scores on a handoff on the first play of the game. Like, can you engage 8? Like, back to the mandate, can you do something to like not get scored on the first play of the game? Like, that
was probably the problem though. Like, I understand knowing that Iowa State's going to run the ball every play, so you think let's crowd the line of scrimmage, and that's the conventional wisdom. But Kansas State was doing that. Rocco Beck only threw 12 times. They knew Iowa State was going to run the ball, and they were crowding the line of scrimmage. But, a strategy to sometimes consider, and I do think they went to this eventually, and it didn't help because they weren't going to tackle anyway. Like, Kansas State's defensive players, I don't know what was going on, but they just chose that they weren't going to tackle on this particular day. But it's good to have guys backed, even in the running game, just so you can cut off some of those explosives, but none of that mattered. Like, ultimately it does fall on Joe Kleinerman. It does fall on Chris Kleiman because the player's performance is their responsibility, and I get that. So if you want to be pissed at them, you should be pissed at them if you want. I get it. But there wasn't a defensive call on God's green earth that was going to fix what the players weren't doing right.
Well, I just don't. I mean, it was senior day. How many seniors are on that defense? Like, I'm going to try to avoid using a bunch of names here, but there's a senior that should be protecting the sideline on 3rd and 16 in a tie game in the fourth quarter. That play, of everything, it's 71-yard touchdown run, 77-yard touchdown run, 79-yard touchdown pass. At least the 79-yard touchdown pass, that one in the third quarter, I was like, the way it kind of occurred, like over the middle, and you catch somebody a little out of position, that at least makes some sense. But 3rd and 16, and you've got 4 guys on that half of the field, and you've got the sideline to use as a defender, and you got somebody over there that, what are you doing? Not using the sideline as a
I get, no, you're right.
That was bar none. That was the worst play of the game. I lost it. That play broke it. You were losing after that happened. There's
2 that jump out to me. It's that one on the sideline that Jalen Knoll gets obviously free when all you got to do is shove him out of bounds. It would have been pretty simple. You just got to do what you've done all year, right? do the simple thing. And the second one was Will Lee's attempt at a tackle. And like you said, try to hide names, but like that one's just in front of everyone's face. Like he gave him like a go faster push almost.
Well, so the funny thing about the Noel play is I lost it. Like I like threw up the blanket that I had or something. Like when I saw that he was going to get the first down and was just like, what is this? And then I look up and the guy's in the end zone and I'm like, how? So I don't know. Cole, I'll just let you talk.
Okay. So, let's level set everything because I was pretty ticked off after the game and on Sunday. I was texting with Curry yesterday actually, and he kind of maybe kept me a little more even keeled. And this is going to sound like a bit of an excuse, and I really don't intend it to be that way. It's the elements and both teams playing it. But Curry said to me that K-State wins comfortably, if not for the snow. He doesn't want it to come across as an excuse either because both teams are playing in that. But the thing about the weather, it completely neutralizes the home crowd atmosphere and then the speed factor, right? So fluky things happen, more fluky things in the game. And, so when you get bad weather like that, it just kind of, to me, it's always more advantageous. We were talking about it before the game in the parking lot. It's more advantageous to the underdog. We said it on the pregame show. And to me, that's the way that it also played out. Again, both teams are playing in that. Clearly, Iowa State was the tougher team when it came to those elements. It seems like K-State had some guys that didn't want to play in the cold.
Yeah, because you're right. I do think the elements played a role. You're right. But when you can just push a guy out of bounds instead of letting him for 70 yards, or if you're Will Lee and you just don't try to speed the guy up and you actually try to tackle him, those are the things that are unforgivable that I don't think the weather really plays a sizable, significant factor, right? Because, and this is why it's hard for me to and I know they're responsible for the performance at the end of the day, the buck falls at their feet, but it's even hard to get pissed at guys like Clayton and Kleiman because those are things that these players have done all year. It's not like they haven't been taught to freaking do it.
And I got a lot of.
Can I throw in one funny? I will bring a little bit of humor to this. That Will Lee play, it looked like when you're in Mario Kart when you hit the mushroom thing that gives you a little speed burst. It looked like he just hit the Z button on the old N64 and just took off like that. That's what that looked like, man. He went 3 miles an hour faster after Will Lee caught up to him, and Lee gave great effort to get to him. That's the other part of the play. It's he was hauling ass to get there.
That tackle, though, to Cole's point, and I'm not saying we don't know what's going through these guys' heads. This is speculation. But it looked like someone that probably felt cold and didn't want to be out there.
Everyone calls out the effort on that play, and I get it. It looks really bad, but he did bust his ass to catch up to him. He was running hard to get up there to catch up to Sama, and then
I guess maybe he thought he was just going to push him on the ground, but
I don't know. Yeah, you can't do that. But anyways, I'll have a ton of numbers for you guys that I've crunched from this game that we'll spew out during the show. Many of you want to hear it, but I'll just tell you, Iowa State had one play that went for 70 or more yards this season. It was a 75-yard pass at Cincinnati. They had 4 plays of 70-plus yards against K-State. Iowa State had 4 plays of 60 yards or more this season going into Saturday. They had 5 against the K-State defense. They had 7 plays of 50 yards or more through 11 games this season. So they were 126 in the country in rushing success rate out of 133 FBS teams and 93rd in the country in yards per rush at 3.8. And I think actually KSU fan Jimmy mentioned DY after the game that they actually were only a 25% rushing success rate against K-State, so even below their 30.
Their success rate throughout the entire game is shitty. Their entire offense, and this is not to give Kansas State an excuse here, is 7 or 8 plays.
Eight plays accounted for 455 yards, and then
and they had 488. So 455 of their 488 yards.
Yeah, so if you exclude the kneel downs at the end that lost 9 yards, they ran 25 plays on their other 25 plays, got 42 yards, 1.7 yards per play. But those 8 plays that they ran averaged 57 yards per play. And we'll get into more numbers here as we go. But 15 yards per play, also by far and away the most by a K-State defense. I could only go back to the year 2000 through all the game logs on Sports Reference. So that's 23 years. I'm sure that number goes all the way back far more. But John, we were talking off air. You guys remember that Nebraska game, in 2010, lost 48-13. Nebraska
2010.
Nebraska ran for 450 yards in that game. Nebraska averaged 11.3 yards per play. That's including garbage time, but they averaged 11.3 yards per play in the entirety of that game. K-State gave up 15 yards per play to Iowa State. It's the most in any college football game over the last 3 seasons. And I only went back 3 seasons. 3 seasons. No FBS opponent has allowed that many yards per play. The next closest was Nevada at 12.4. K-State gave up 15.
That's unreal. Like, right here's Taylor. I was reading it. This is Taylor Martinez's line from that 2010 game. But I'm sorry, everybody. This was one I had just dead and buried, never wanted to come back to, being someone that was in school and in attendance for this game. But Taylor Martinez on a Thursday night ESPN broadcast with the whole country watching had 15 carries for 241 yards. But somehow it was worse. It was significantly worse for K-State on Saturday against Iowa State. I mean, Abu Sama had 16 carries for 276 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then the other one, Cole, that I thought really stood out to me is that it was, I think it was like 5 yards per play worse than the when Kyler Murray put 700 yards of offense on K-State in 2018, which is like the most helpless I can remember feeling watching a K-State defense play, like that 2018 game, which, the vibes were just awful that entire season. But that was the most, Snyder 2.0 down to the very end was still, pretty feisty and not wanting to give in to anything. That was the most, resigned he ever was after a game. Like 2018, he kind of had a quote. I'm trying to remember what his specific quote was, but it was something like, this may be broken to where we can't fix it or something. The Kyler Murray beating down Bill Snyder to the point of being resigned about where things were at was like 5 yards per play better than what occurred on Saturday.
We said, We sat in the press box together for that one in Norman. Oklahoma averaged 10.7 yards per play in that game. K-State 15 on Saturday. And I remember playing that game. Kyler Murray fumbled the snap, had to pick it up 2 seconds later, still picked it up and had no pressure on him for 8 seconds, then delivered a pass for 20 yards.
For what it's worth, I bet that one was north of 15 yards per play by the time Oklahoma took their foot off the gas in the third quarter and just cruised the rest of the way.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember enough of
I say that because this game, you still, we just talked about, Cole mentioned, they still had 22 other plays when they're basically not giving up even 2.5 yards of play. So that's not to excuse this game, but that Oklahoma game, there was never the 22 plays in between where you felt good about. There was not one play you felt good about until Oklahoma decided they were done playing.
Yeah, but it's still just, I think the point stands emphatically the context of it is that, that's...
No, the context perfect. And to be honest, in seasons that matter, and some of the players and coaches from Kansas State history, if they're listening, they'll probably get pissed at me because I say seasons will matter, because to them, every season matters. But in hindsight, 2018, Coach Snyder's last year doesn't really hold a lot of significance or matter too much in Kansas State history. And then 2020, because of COVID year and everything that you had to endure, I don't think matters a ton, even if it was meaningful to the locker room to go through those situations and experiences. To a fan and to Kansas State history, just because of the circumstances around those years, I don't put a whole lot of stock into it, because those are the worst defensive performances outside of this one that I can remember. You're talking about 2018 Oklahoma. I know the numbers aren't as bad, but in terms of a lifeless effort and feeling just like you're outmatched and you have no shot, 2018 Mississippi State kind of feels similar.
Oof, yeah.
So that comes to mind. And in 2020, you have both Iowa State and Texas. You give 69 points to Texas, I think, in one of the last games, because you're playing guys out of position and because you're down so many players on defense. And you lose 45-0 to Iowa State, where they, do whatever they want basically on both sides of the ball to you. Those are the three that come to my mind as, or I guess 4, as being the worst. And this one is in that ballpark, but this is the only one that's meaningful to me, and a meaningful game and a meaningful season.
Home field apparel is the only thing that can save us. I've got some home field apparel on today. I'm trying to save my my mood with that. Make sure to get to homefieldapparel.com for their Black Friday sale that is still going on. Use promo code Black Friday. to get 20% off, even better than your typical discount that you're getting with the 3MA code. So code Black Friday, get on over there right now to homefieldapparel.com. You can get 40 plus different K-State designs, retro looks, retro logos. It is very cool. Make sure that you're geared up for Bramlage this season. Would highly recommend that because I do think it will still be a very fun basketball season that we have coming up. So homefieldapparel.com. You can even get a Hawaii Rainbow Warrior shirt like what DY has on today, which that one's pretty sweet. I do like the old school Hawaii helmets there. That's pretty nice. Homefieldapparel.com. Get stocked up, and we're back in just a moment.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
I wanted to touch on this. We got off a little bit on the context of how bad the defensive performance was there. But yeah, when you talk about, guys that maybe weren't as interested in playing in the snow, and this is where, to me, some of this does come back a little bit to coaching. And I'm with you. I'm not like overly mad at Joe Klanderman or Chris Kleiman or anything because of what happened necessarily. But I would say, like, sure as hell seemed like Iowa State wanted that game more. I mean, and I guess it makes sense because of the season that they've had and the position that they're in case they was falling a bit short of expectations, didn't have the Big 12 championship game to play for again at that point. But, man, senior day, and you could tell Chris Kleiman, I think, was as upset about, it was a kind of a weird press conference. We can talk about that. But I think it was because he was super, super angry. And I think a large part of it is because he knew, like, he's got this big senior class and, like, Will Howard playing probably his last game at Bill Snyder Family Stadium, and they go out on that note in that way. And that's why I just, like, why can't you get fired up to play that game, And I think there is, we don't think there's a whole lot of love lost between the K-State and Iowa State staffs. Like, I'm surprised that they weren't able to light more of a fire under the guys to be as pumped up to play that game because it sure as hell looked like it meant a lot more to Iowa State on Saturday.
Yeah, it's fair criticism, and I'm sure it meant a lot to Chris Kleiman, and I'm sure he probably tried to get that through, but there's two things here. For one is the one you spoke about already that you kind of discovered ahead of time that you don't necessarily have anything to play for, and you wonder if that plays a role. And two, something I was saying all week, I've never seen Kansas State celebrate a victory harder than they did for Kansas when they beat the Jayhawks in the Sunflower Showdown in Lawrence the week before. And you got to wonder, because you're dealing with kids, and we've seen this time and time again, year after year, for as long as football's been around. And the best coaches haven't been able to defeat this because you're dealing with college-age kids that bask in the glory of those kinds of victories that are meaningful to them and a little too long to where they don't shift their focus back in time. I've seen it happen in Alabama. Nick Saban.
I assume you mean regular season victory. I mean, like they beat TCU in the Big 12 championship game last year. Like,
yeah, I mean, when you have a game the following week that you have to cover for in time, I don't think that this team ever recovered from psychologically the glory of that win. And I've seen the best coaches of college football history succumb to this. And I think Kansas State's kids, because they are still kids, never got around to the preparation. I'm thinking Iowa State close enough. I said this at the time, and this is not a shot at anyone, but you had players still posting on Instagram pictures of them laying on the ground on the Jayhawk logo and kind of taunting KU. That was Tuesday. Tuesday. They were still thinking and talking about KU on Tuesday. And I think those kinds of things matter because time and time again, year after year in college football, you see teams lose that game right after a huge win. Oklahoma State, they almost lost to Houston after beating Oklahoma.
I certainly think there's probably something to that. That being said, K-State is up by 7 points and has multiple times, opportunities to get up by 2 scores or get a defensive stop. And despite all of that, and I will also just say that tackling's been an issue for this team all year. For this defense, I think KSU fan had mentioned they were 100th in the country in explosive play rate by opposing offenses, and that number is only going to get worse. And now, in Big 12 play, guys, K-State's allowing 5.5 yards per carry in Big 12 play. Big 12 play is over. 9 Big 12 games, 5.5 yards per carry. There's several teams tied for 127th nationally in yards per rush allowed at 5.5 yards per carry. All right, so
Yeah,
This defense has been one of the worst run defenses in America for quite some time now. They're allowing 4.9 yards per rush on the year. That ranks 108th nationally. But in Big 12 play, 5.5 yards per carry. If you extrapolate that over the course of the entire season, it'd be a tie for 127th nationally out of 133 FBS teams. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, I don't disagree with any of that, but Kurtz's comment was about wanting to be there a little bit more than the others. And I was pointing out 2 reasons why that could be the case.
No, I mean, it absolutely could be. It's hard to read minds. I mean, you certainly see some effort plays out there that would seem to indicate that one team wanted it more and one team was playing a little more. Look, Iowa State was firing off the ball. Listen, Iowa State offensive line that's not very good. They don't have a good running game, and yet they get 287 yards on 19 design carries, 15 yards per rush. I went back through every K-State game log all the way back to 2000 once again for that. Nowhere close. Any opponent has run for that type of yardage against K-State's defense over 23 years. It's just... yeah.
To my point, I'll throw this hypothetical at both of you, and I think I know what answer I'm going to get. But instead of playing Iowa State in the snow with no Big 12 title shot on the line, do you think that would have been the same defensive performance if they were playing KU and the Big 12 title was still on the line? Do you think they still do that if Kansas is the opponent and the Big 12 title is still on the line?
It's probably different. I mean, I don't know. That was like so dramatically bad. I'm just like, is there something to they couldn't prepare for the snow at all? And like, but I mean, no, I would imagine that you would probably get more effort, and you're probably using the sideline as a defender and not giving the Super Mario Kart boost to somebody down the field.
For some reason, they weren't locked in.
Yeah. How about this, guys? Iowa State's first play in K-State territory occurred with 12:30 left in the game. That play, of course, went for a 33-yard touchdown pass. So K-State had to give up on the only play Iowa State ran in their territory up to that point, went for a 33-yard touchdown. K-State ran 31 plays in the first half alone on Iowa State's inside Iowa State 50. For the game, they ran 49 plays inside Iowa State's 50, or 48% of their total plays in Iowa State territory. Iowa State ran 4 of its 33 plays in K-State territory, 11%. Just another sign of the explosiveness allowed. K-State ran a school record 102 plays to Iowa State's 35. As you guys know, the 42-12 time of possessions, the second highest in program history, behind only the Bowling Green game in 2019, and the 32 first downs tie for the third highest in program history. Iowa State has 10. Just some numbers that are just a statistical anomaly from this game. I mean, we truly watched one of the most bizarre, inexplicable games when you look at the final stats to what DY and John said earlier. One of the most bizarre games and outcomes you'll ever see when you look at a box score. I bet Stats of Wars, guys, success rate thing is going to show K-State should have won that game by 30 plus by the success rate.
That is going to be, I don't know whether not to say fun or what to look at this week. That way, you had some Kansas folks last week looking at it where Kansas had like a minor advantage in success rate, being like, oh well, this tells us what boy, you can really blow that thing up this week.
John, K-State allowed 1.2. I never use this stat, but I am for this because it's so unique. K-State allowed 1.27 points per play. Over the last 3 years in college football games, that was the second most points per play ever allowed by a defense in all of college football over the last 3 years. Texas State, earlier this season, Texas State allowed 1.31 points per play in a game, but only 2 Power 5 teams over the last 3 years alone have even allowed over 1 point per play. And that's Vanderbilt at 1.06 points and Virginia Tech at 1.02 points per play in 2021-22. So that's way below still the 1.27 allowed by K-State's defense. It's bizarre, man.
Dude, that is insane. Think about that. Every time Iowa State snapped the ball on Saturday, essentially they were scoring a point. If they got a snap off, they were scoring a point. Oh, yes, over a point. Yes.
It's when you look at like Ken Palm in basketball, right? Like that 1.27 points per play would be like the best offensive rating in college basketball, right? It's the best. So, yeah. I don't know.
Man,
I mean, the other thing, guys, is like we've talked about it this year, K-State's lack of explosiveness offensively. So Iowa State has 8 plays of 30 yards or more, right, in the game. And obviously we talked about the 5 of 60 yards or more. K-State had 1 play over 30 yards offensively. All right. Like it's a Ben Sinnott 44-yard pass. They didn't have another play that went for more than 22 yards.
Yeah. Here, I kind of wanted to touch on offense, if that's okay, a little bit. Like, at the end of the day, they probably did enough. I get it. And I understand you only run for 3.9 yards per carry, technically. So I understand why Colin Klein did this. But, like, Kansas State really had to throw 48 times in the snow.
Yeah, I mean, no, I was a little disappointed in the ground game for sure. Because I think here's the thing, like with Will, because he's, it's such a polarizing topic, and I'm just so sick of some of the discourse on him. Like, people can't have a rational Will Howard discussion, it seems like, ever. But if you're asking him to throw it 48 times in the snow, like Will Howard this year, pretty much if you're going to ask him to throw it 48 times in a game, you're asking for like 4 turnover worthy throws. I mean, it's just, again, I think if we're having a rational Will Howard discussion, like, I love the guy and he's done a lot of great things. And he also, you're going to get 4 great throws, but you're asking for 4 turnover worthy throws if you have him throwing the ball that much. And unfortunately, one of those came at a really inopportune time late in the game on the next to last drive that you had. So I think that's a part of the problem. That is definitely a part of the problem. And that, to me, is much more back to effort, who wants it more kind of a thing. If the offensive line can't produce more on the ground game, they're also having to go to the quarterback run game a lot and run like a lot of quarterback sweeps and stuff for Will Howard, which I don't think, again, running quarterback sweeps with Will Howard in the snow is a great way to try and win a football game.
Yeah. I have a tweet out there. I'm sure it's probably people in Will Howard's camp don't love it, but if you have Avery Johnson under center and run it a ton with him, you probably have more success on the ground. That being said, like, I guess to me that's probably more of a winning strategy, because I think part of the problem on offense is if you're playing in those types of conditions with a quarterback that has been proven to be turnover prone, and I'm not trying to run him down, but those are facts. He's very turnover prone. He's fortunate that he didn't end the game against KU with the pick 6. But if you have to throw the ball 50 times in the snow, you're not going to win.
Yeah, he delivered. So I was pretty impressed early on. Some of the throws he made were pretty impressive. And also that fourth down throw at their own like 15 or 17 with 4 minutes left in the game or whatever it was to Phillip Brooks. That's a long throw, a tough throw in the snow. And, not only that, Phillip Brooks keeping his footing for that type of route. There were some impressive balls, but at the same time, the last 3 drives, he goes 4 of 14 passing for 50 yards, has an interception, and averages 3.8 yards per pass, something along those lines. So, and they score 0 points over their last 3 drives. And I guess the thing that bothers me, guys, just about the offense in general, first of all, it's a season worst 4.9 yards per play that K-State had. They ran for 3.9 yards per carry. Iowa State coming in was giving up 3.8 per carry. So just a little bit north of what Iowa State gives up on average on the year. K-State's longest run was 15 yards in the game on the ground. But I guess what bothers me a little bit is K-State fails to score a point on their last 3 drives against an Iowa State defense that was on the field for 102 plays. Like, isn't that the time when that they should be worn down and you should be able to just smash it down their throat? Like, 100, I know it was cold, so I know like feet, all that isn't playing a part and wearing you down, but 102 plays for the road team that only has 65, 70 guys on their travel roster. So they probably have guys that were playing 90% of those snaps.
I know, I agree, but that goes back to my point a little bit. And I get it's because he probably didn't feel like they could run the ball well, but they were exclusively all pass at that point. They didn't even try to go back to the running game. It didn't feel like.
Yeah, and so here's I think where the conversation is, guys, on Will is, and this, I don't want this to come across as cherry picking, because Will was great in the fourth quarter against Texas, and he made some big time plays against KU in the fourth quarter. But if people dwell on the end of games and close game situations, they tend to nitpick the quarterback more. And against Oklahoma State, Missouri, and Iowa State, when K-State had a chance to tie or take the lead in the fourth quarter, all right, 2 drives versus Oklahoma State, 0 points, an interception, 3 of 10 passing for 44 yards, 4.4 yards per pass on those 2 drives. Against Missouri, 4 drives in the fourth quarter with a chance to put the game away, tie, take the lead, 3 points, 3 of 10 passing for 38 yards, an average of 3.8 yards per pass. And against Iowa State, the last 3 drives, fourth quarter, 0 points, 4 of 14 passing for 50 yards, an interception, You combine those 3 games in those situations, 9 drives, 3 points, 10 of 34 passing, 29%, 132 yards through the air, and 3.9 yards per pass. So, go ahead.
Yeah. I said you also said, like, you did spell it out there, like, it's a 1-score game, and you're throwing all those passes the last 3 drives.
Yeah.
I feel, I mean, he abandoned the running game. Hey, maybe that's on me because I got pissed at Klein for not abandoning the run game earlier this season. So I can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I didn't want that to tend to be like I'm bashing Will or anything. I'm telling. That's why I think a lot of people think about that is like they think about late game situations, quarterbacks making plays, and they dwell on those situations. And those are 3 games that K-State lost by 1 score. They finished 1-4 on the year in 1-score games, right? And so, but he was great against Texas in the 4th quarter. Yeah, he was good at times.
Cole, I will also, you know what people are going to remember and dwell on too about the Texas game is that 1st and goal play where he makes the wrong read on the run and he maybe scores or at least gets down to like the 1 or the 2 if he goes right instead of left, and then they wind up not scoring. So even in the Texas game, there was another one of those moments. And so, yeah, I agree. It's all a very fair point. I mean, this year they being in as many 1-score games as they were, 5 1-score games, they only win 1 of them. Like it's going to come down on the quarterback in basically every single scenario. That's how the fans are going to think about it. But also, you know, I was just seeing some of the dialogue online and I realized, you know, I mean, it's dangerous to read too much into just the most online conversations about people. But people just being like, you know, oh, this dude's never clutch, could never do it under pressure. I'm like, I mean, let's not, you can't just wipe away last year. You know, I mean, this is where I feel like the conversation gets so Bruce Weber-esque. Like, you can't wipe away the fact that the guy made a ballsy throw to RJ Garcia in the end zone in the Big 12 championship game to beat undefeated TCU to win a conference championship. Like that still happened, and you can't just erase that. Like, it's not like his whole career that's been the case. This year there were more instances where he did not produce in the clutch than when he did, which happened at Kansas, and that is true, and that is a fair criticism. And I would not say that like the lasting legacy of Will Howard is that he was great in the clutch all the time, but you also can't wipe away everything else that happened. And it's just so infuriating to see how that, you know, nobody can just have a nuanced conversation about it. It has to be black or white, and just there's no in between there. Like, we can have a nuanced conversation and say that Will Howard was a good, not great quarterback at K-State who accomplished something that only 2 other quarterbacks in K-State history have, and he played great football. We did all the numbers last year when he was coming down the stretch. Like, the way he played last year was like a top 5 to 10 quarterback in college football when he was actually on the field playing, and you can't take that away from him. So just don't be stupid with the conversation around Will Howard. So many people expose themselves as this just narrative driven, like, I'm going to ignore everything else just because I'm frustrated right now that Will Howard didn't win the Iowa State game. That's what I would say about that.
Just a complicated career because of how high the highs were and how low the lows were. You know, I said it multiple times throughout the season. He's a guy that runs a little hot and runs a little cold. And when he's hot, he's super hot. When he's cold, he's super cold. Through all that, he's a really good person. And a lot of the people listening to this probably say, I don't give a shit about that. It matters still. He's a human being and he's a good guy. But he's had a complicated career. He should be lauded for his achievements, his accomplishments, and helping to win Kansas State a Big 12 championship last year. This year didn't go as what he would like, but he kept his head down and he was tough through it all. And he will tell you that he didn't play his best football this year, I am sure. At the same time, I will go on the other side of the two, just because I hate this premise that sometimes comes off. Like, Kansas State fans aren't unique. Like, and they're not the worst of the worst. Like, I hear this, like, what he goes through, and I get it. He's been through a lot for a college quarterback. I get it. But every college quarterback goes through a lot. You know what? Bo Nix might win the Heisman. Ask him about his experience in college football. When you sign up to play quarterback in a major Power 5 college football program, this is what you get.
Yeah. I think that's all very well said by both of you. And Will came up clutch at numerous times in his career. There's a lot of pressure in the Big 12 championship. There were pressure. I think they had a stat last year how good he was in like third and long situations, 3rd and 10 plus, and the passes that he threw and delivered. I mean, I think K-State converted like 50+% of those throws with Will at quarterback. He's been a terrific representative of the university. I have a great deal of admiration and respect to him. And then what DY just said, I completely echo that. Like, it is annoying. Like, there are some bad fans that go after guys on social media, and those tend to be more visible than some of the others. But yeah, this fan base is no different. I've seen a lot of people saying like K-State fans are spoiled, they're acting pretentious. No, you're just living in a bubble when you say that. If you observe what happens at all these other major college football programs, it's far worse. Like, just look at Nebraska. I saw these game threads on Nebraska recently. Like, now they have reason to be pissed. I mean, 7 straight years without a bowl now, but like their fans just going nuts on guys. So
look, this week Texas A&M got a coach out of there before when they were trying to hire. Like, Texas A&M fans just like revolted at the hire that they were trying to make. And by the way, they got kind of just like the same guy.
Yeah. No, and my only thought to bring that up is like, I hate when people bash players the way that they sometimes do if they go over the top. But in general, like, I also hate I don't know if it's a little bit of a self-loathingness or other people that come on top, but like Kansas State this is a pretty tame environment compared to what else is out there.
Well, it certainly is a tame media environment. I can speak to that. And I don't, I was always a little bit sensitive to some of the criticism that would come to that of how local media covered the team. But I mean, it is true. It's pretty friendly. It's a pretty friendly media environment to be in. I would always bristle and get so frustrated with we don't have to go back and relitigate the end of Snyder 2.0, but some of the issues that he took with the media there. And it was just like, dude, if you were in College Station, let's just use A&M. If you were in Auburn, Alabama, like, I mean, I would not be treated the same way, my friend. So.
Yeah. And sometimes when I know it's going to feel like I'm directly calling dudes out, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like the players and coaches sometimes complain about even the media at Kansas State. I kind of scoff a little bit. It's like, if you dream of better, or if you would not survive in a lot of other places. I was at Ohio State and Iowa, and not to say that Iowa's even not tame. It's relatively tame, but it's sharper than it is at Kansas State. And I get it. And the fans are probably like, you don't ask tough questions. Most of the time I do not. And I will say I am very, very tame when it comes to the media, and I'm probably one of the most tame. But that's why I scoff sometimes at the pushback from players and coaches a little bit too. It's like, you get it pretty easy with us.
Well, the thing that I feel like right or wrong, good or bad, that I'm most known for is the time Bill Snyder blew up on me. And I just asked 3 very calm, this sort of voice questions, just like asking follow-ups about the quarterbacks. And like, that's what led to a blow up. I think that accentuates more than anything what the media environment is like. So yeah, look, this is a very nuanced discussion about all things Will Howard, and that's how you have to take it. Like, it's not, there's no way to just do this black and white hot take artist stuff that happens on both sides of the aisle. I completely agree with that. I completely agree with everything. I get frustrated with the fan discourse about Will Howard, but that's because they are fans, and that's how fans generally act. And K-State is not in any way, shape, or form unique to that. I'll just point this out too. The Egg Bowl, right, happened this weekend. There was a screenshot going around of two guys. Maybe I shouldn't laugh the way I am at this, but like a Mississippi State fan and an Ole Miss fan. I don't remember which one was the one bringing in the police. I think it was the Mississippi State fan. Like, he's arguing with a Mississippi fan, and then he like threatens to bomb the place, and then like tags the Oxford police, and the Oxford police were like, "Hey, you shouldn't be making threats," and he says like "F you," like that's what's going on. And then Ole Miss had Bo Wallace, their former quarterback, in the stands threatening to fight a coffee shop that was arguing with him on Twitter. Like, threatening to fight a coffee shop, telling them what section he was in the stands to come up and like. So yeah, K-State fans are not unique. I've not seen anybody trying to fight Radinas in the stands as of yet from the K-State fan base. So I think we're still okay there.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to get across, that there's always going to be bad actors, but to say that Kansas State is some unhealthy environment, that would be a false advertisement of the situation.
Okay, well, as far as more bigger picture, I mean, here's the thing that sucks about it. Like, you can say, and Cole, I understand what Curry is saying with that, and I probably tend to agree with him that if it's not a crazy, weird snow game, K-State probably does win the game. I would agree with that. But I'm also like, we go back to like the 2020 Iowa State game, and I know, K-State had like half the roster out, and Iowa State had a lot of luck that year with their COVID stuff, and, you got drilled. But at a certain point, you just got to sack up and find a way to go beat Iowa State more than you lose to them. I'm just kind of tired of the excuse making with that. And the problem with that loss is it's like, you can be mad and angry and want it, but you have a month before you're going to play another game. And by the time you get there, this team is probably going to look a lot different than it does right now. And you don't really have any shot at redemption here. And it puts a major damper on the end of the season. If you would have closed out 9-3, had 19 wins in back-to-back years, even if you lose the bowl game, a shot at 20, back-to-back 10-win seasons, which hasn't happened a ton in K-State history, beat your two biggest rivals at the end of the year. Like, everybody, it would have been, I think, an adequate enough year, even if you would have been disappointed to not make the Big 12 championship game. This just leaves such a bad taste in the mouth. It fires up all this discourse again that we were talking about, not just about Will Howard, but about Chris Kleiman. And I'll say this, I've got to give a shout out to our guy Grant. Cole, I thought he was texting us, and I thought he had a really salient point where he said, like, Chris Kleiman every year does such a good job at one point of making me think, God, we have like the perfect coach and a great staff, and we're in a great position. And then also, what is going on? Like, we are in a lot of trouble here. Like, and that is, even last year you had the Tulane game, right? Where we were checked out ready for basketball when we were doing the Oklahoma preview show and thinking we're in a world of trouble, and then they come back and win the Big 12 championship game. Unfortunately, this year they kind of laid two eggs because Oklahoma State felt awful, and then Iowa State here felt awful. So it just, it brings you back to questioning some things and wondering what's going to happen here in the offseason. This game dramatically, to me, affected how I will remember this season.
I would agree. It's a black eye on the season. The only part of me that says I'm still like not completely writing it off is that you did extend that streak against KU and what was the most meaningful Sunflower Showdown in a long time. That doesn't make the season, but like, imagine if you don't get that one, right? Because so that one keeps it still like right at the foundation for me, at least.
Yeah, I would probably have to characterize the season as a disappointment at this point. And people are going to be like, you're Kansas State. You should be happy with 8 wins. You shouldn't have these unrealistic expectations. But when you look at what Kansas State did have coming back, and I know they lost a lot of star power. We were concerned about replacing a Julius Brents, a Felix, and some of those guys, a Deuce Vaughn that they lost. They also had some key guys coming back and, a starting quarterback and probably just expected a little bit more from this football team. And if they close out one more of those one-score games and get over the top, and they get 9-3 and they go 2-3 in one-score games versus 1-4, the season feels a lot different. But to lose the Iowa State game in the way that they did, it does leave a really sour taste in your mouth. And I think there is a stark difference between 8-4 and 9-3 and 7-2 in the league. Look, if K-State would have won that game, they would have had the best record of the last 2 years in winning percentage out of any team in the Big 12. They would have been 15-4 against Big 12 teams, including the Big 12 championship. And so an opportunity to win 10 games back-to-back years would have been significant and meaningful. Not to say like the bowl game isn't still an opportunity, getting to 9-4, depending on who you play. But, it also depends on what you see in the bowl game. Is it going to be Avery Johnson that gets a lot of the snaps in the bowl game? And some of these young guys, to give you a hope and glimpse into the future of next year and use it as a springboard into the 2024 season. That's where I think some of the excitement will come from. But otherwise, yeah, it's a bit of a disappointment for sure. 8-4, I think 9 wins would have felt fine. 8-4, just and the way that you played in that game, that's tough to swallow.
Especially relative to metrics, I think calling it a disappointment is accurate. I think failure might be a little over the top, but I think disappointment is a perfect descriptor. You lose to KU, that would have made it a failure, I think.
Yeah, it would have been a disaster to me if you lose to KU and get 7-5, and you look at all the metrics you mentioned, DY, they all have K-State as like a top 15 team. They have all season, and it's just, it's those one-score games and not being able to get over the hump in a couple of those moments that are the difference between a phenomenal season to what feels like a little bit of a disappointment.
I think it's probably time to turn to the Kleiman Howard stuff, right? A little bit.
Well, yeah, yes. Also, bowl. I'm sure people are wanting to know what the bowl prognosis is going to be here. I was also just going to say, the discussion we're having on this season, man. We should probably send a Christmas card to Rich Miller for dropping that pick 6, man, because that makes a massive difference in the season. So, Rich Miller, my guy, thank you, sir.
And that's not to harp on it, but that's another thing with like Will Howard's like, while everyone we're like we should give him more credit than he's getting, it's like also like, dude, you dodged so many other bullets this year.
Yeah, look, yes, that's fair and true, but again, don't take that then to discounting everything that happened last year.
But think about his legacy if he throws that pick 6.
That would be bad. That would be bad, and it would be really. That would have really made it, I feel like, Bruce Weber-esque. Like, we're kind of already in that territory now, but that would have been like the Bruce plummeting for the last 3 years that he was here. Anyway, do we want to touch on bowls real quick? Because here's the thing to me. I can't defend if K-State falls to the Liberty Bowl. I can't defend it. After that, what am I gonna say? You had all the bowl reps and is there to watch the worst defensive performance in K-State history, arguably. So what can I say? But God, you talk about a tough pill for your boy to swallow. If this turns into a Liberty Bowl season, shout out to them. They're gonna renovate the thing. The mock-ups look nice, but anyway, I'm not going to have to be there, so, whatever. That'll be all you, DY, to deal with. You can have my obstructed view seat in the press box, but I just hate that. We got to get your mark. Look, I got a couple bones to pick with you here lately. Get some new bowls, man. Get some new bowl agreements. Why did they re-up with the same? Get the Liberty Bowl the hell out of here. I can't stomach that, but it does seem like that's a pretty real possibility.
I agree. New bowl lineup. Well, and I know Cole and I kind of got different things we're being told right now. I'll start off. Brett McMurphy has Kansas State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and he's usually the one that's on the bowl stuff pretty well, more than anyone. And he said, even in a podcast I heard, that he was told it's a greater than 80% chance that Kansas State's going to Orlando just because the Pop-Tarts Bowl has been dead set on winning the Wildcats in Orlando most of the year. They were at 8 games, which is a ridiculous amount for one bowl to be following a team around. They were in Lubbock. They were in Austin. They had no reason to be in Austin because they certainly aren't going to get Texas. So they've been dead set on Kansas State. That's still my impression. It's the impression that I've got from those within the athletic department as well. The Pop-Tarts Bowl doesn't want Oklahoma State, so that helps. They've had them twice in the last 4 years. They had Oklahoma last year. So even if Oklahoma fell beyond the Alamo Bowl, I don't know. Maybe they just take the Sooners because of what they think that might give them in terms of prestige, but they just had them last year, and the Big 12 usually tries to prevent teams from going to the same bowl 2 years in a row.
Yeah, no, I think I think there's a good chance of the Pop-Tarts Bowl still, but I think it's largely dictated DY off if Oklahoma and Texas get into the New Year's Six, right? Isn't that the scenario that probably needs to happen for that to occur?
That would make it a lock probably because the Alamo Bowl would just take Oklahoma State. But even if it doesn't, if the Alamo Bowl takes Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, I just don't know if the Pop-Tarts Bowl wants them with how much they've seen those two schools in the last 4 years.
And because Iowa State has been in Orlando twice in the last 4 years, so in that scenario, they wouldn't.
And Iowa State, I believe, even prefers the Texas Bowl, which will probably matter as well.
Yeah, and then, I think ideally you would hope for Texas and Oklahoma to get in the playoff, or if Oklahoma State, which I don't see any way this happens, but if they were to knock Texas off in the Big 12 championship, Oklahoma, Texas, this would clearly still get a New Year's Six bowl invite, and Oklahoma State would get an automatic invite for winning the Big 12. Bottom line is you feel good about the Pop-Tarts Bowl if 2 Big 12 teams, whoever it is, get into the New Year's Six. And so I think that's
even without that, I think there's a chance, though.
Yeah.
So basically, if you didn't have enough reason to root for Oklahoma State to beat Texas, to give them the middle finger on the way out the door, anyway, now you have even more reason to do that.
But in a roundabout way, it helps that Oklahoma doesn't have to play an extra game to get a potential loss because they still have a good shot to get in the top 12, which could give them a chance to be in the New Year's Six with an at-large berth because of it.
And they should move into the top 12 with Louisville losing to Kentucky. But the only thing is, I think, is if Louisville loses to Florida State and Florida State makes the playoff, is it similar to what the Sugar Bowl was last year and Louisville automatically gets in?
I'd have to look at it if the ACC does have an automatic tie-in. It's not a part of the playoff.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, probably a good chance of the Pop-Tarts Bowl potentially still, and then you probably play NC State. Although NC State might have played, they blew out North Carolina. Then maybe they go of that.
NC State. I mean, that I tell you, it's not a sexy opponent. That's kind of the opponent that I don't like because they're not real sexy, but they're good. I mean, I think they're pretty good. They're certainly playing well.
John, they got a great defense, John. So they're well coached defensively. That would be quite the test for K-State, and if they have a young quarterback playing in that game.
Yeah, so, okay, consensus, it seems like Liberty Bowl or Pop-Tarts Bowl.
I think that's probably, yeah.
Unless, can Kent State just say, F it, we'd rather go to guaranteed rate? I don't know.
Well, that would be a move I would love. Gene, if you're listening, I know you're a big fan of the show. Gene, if that happens, please do. Let's just go to Arizona. I don't know if they have that luxury of making that choice. I know, but I had to say my piece there a little bit.
It is the lowest Big 12 Bowl. Our producer was asking. It is the lowest Big 12 Bowl, but it's still better than the Liberty Bowl.
Cole mentioned that it might be a young quarterback playing in the bowl game. That would be if Will Howard has either decided to go pro and just start getting ready there or hit the transfer portal. I think he will be the highest profile of names that everybody is wondering about. And look, call it like it is. He had his press conference and gave like hey, thank you to the media. I appreciate all of you guys. Like definitely get every single way that he conducted himself after the game. Mason, shout out to Mason, both, who had the great shot for you guys at KSO of Will walking off the field and like stopping and looking back one last time as he was heading into the tunnel there. I mean, everything seems to be like that's come to an end. Will Howard's time at K-State here, correct? I mean, that's definitely the vibe that we're getting.
Yeah, I'd be absolutely shocked if he came back. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to say beyond that. I think there's a good chance he enters the transfer portal. Like, I think that is within the realm of possibility. Curious as to whether or not he would go forward with the bowl game, but with the, I guess, pace that I'm hearing things kind of unfold, I think that might be something that doesn't happen, but I can't say for certain.
Look, we think Will is certainly moving on, and regarding the bowl, it probably at that point makes most sense for both parties to kind of mutually go their ways. Will can find an even better landing spot by, starting to search around and focusing on that, and whether it's NFL or another college spot, and then also for Avery Johnson to get the first team bowl reps and all those practices, and then get the start in the bowl game, and kind of, like I said earlier, springboard your offense into 2024, get some of those younger guys some more playing time, a Garrett Oakley at tight end, maybe a Trey Spivey gets a few more snaps in the bowl. Jace Brown obviously really has come on. So yeah, I think that would probably be the scenario that plays out, and it's probably what makes most sense for both parties.
Yeah, I think it just would, especially with what directions both parties seem to be leaning towards and wanting to go in. I think for a bowl game, I think you should begin that next path.
Do we think that there? I mean, here's the thing. I guess the reality is there will probably, in college football in today's day and age, there will probably be at least a guy or two that kind of hurts that will enter the portal here, right? And so I think you're probably looking at that, and some guys that it would be a little bit more expected that might move on. I assume you anticipate that there will be a decent amount of roster shakeup before we actually get to the bowl game.
I guess it would probably mean go back to how much is a decent amount, but it's hard to know because sometimes maybe. Actually, I'll say maybe, because I was like last year there wasn't a lot of it came after. There wasn't a lot in general, to be honest. Kansas State's been kind of immune to that kind of turnover. I think there will be some. Every team loses the guy they don't want to lose, at least one or two. I think they were probably able to stunt some of the pace of a lot of it last year because of the carrot that was the Sugar Bowl, right?
Yes.
So that played a role. I still think in the Kansas State world that they will suffer some of the same pain that every other school does go through when it comes to the comings and goings of the transfer portal. But I still think it'll be a good amount for Kansas State. Like in terms of, I don't think it's going to be explosive. Like over half of college football last year was over 20. I don't think Kansas State's that.
No. Yeah, I wouldn't expect that either. I expect there'll be a name that probably does hurt that enters the portal that you maybe don't expect this year. And then maybe, some other guys. And it's probably a mutual understanding that it's best for both to split ways. And so there'll be some guys that probably haven't played much or the writing is kind of on the wall that move on. And there'll probably be a name or two that hurt. And that's just the nature of how it works.
The Chris Kleiman press conference, I guess I watched DY, the video that you and Mason did right after the game where you guys hit on that. He ended his press conference with basically the same thing Will Howard did, kind of thanking the media for the coverage this year and how well they treat him, which I guess he must have, been in our heads and listened to that conversation that we had earlier about how soft the media can be in Manhattan, Kansas. But I don't know, anything to read into that other than the guy was just seething mad and trying not to let that show? Do we make more of that?
I try to think back if he did that any other year. For some reason, I think he might have. I guess the one comment was, "Thanks for treating me well," because that sounded like a past tense deal almost. With that being said, I know of nothing going on. I don't think anything is technically going on. I have asked a few people that would maybe know about that, and they think, like you alluded to, and like I have written, that he was so seething mad that he tried to guard against it so much that maybe it came off in that form. I know that he was pretty seething mad, just from talking to people. I also was just told not long ago, and it was actually this morning, it was interesting. And this might be because of how angry he was, but I thought, and maybe this person that I spoke to just didn't see him, but they saw what they believed was every other coach. Kleiman was not at the reception afterwards. Yeah, when you have senior night, you have a reception afterwards with the seniors and their parents, and he was not seen. Now, maybe that was just by accident, or maybe he was just so pissed off that he knew he probably couldn't hang around.
Well, the other interesting part of the discussion that I will bring up. First of all, as far as other jobs go, Texas A&M's filled up, Michigan State's filled up. What Duke? We worried about. I don't know what the job would be out there. That Houston.
Well, yeah. There's no current job available that would take it. And I'll say what I've said all along, at least in close circles. Nothing that I have heard substantially on any kind of level makes me think that Chris Kleiman is leaving. If anything, I've always been pretty certain that this is his last job. I think that's his intention. What I have always been told is that if there is one job that he would leave Kansas State for, and this is not a slam dunk that he would, they think that the one that would turn his head the most is Iowa. Now, that probably makes sense because of where he's from, obviously. And it might be something to keep an eye on because I don't know. Kirk Ferentz is really old, the longest tenured head coach in FBS. And again, it's not to say Kleiman would take that job, but obviously he'd be near the top of their list, of course. And Kirk Ferentz is definitely in the wheelhouse right now where him retiring at any point would not surprise anyone.
Well, here's the way that I'm not so worried about Iowa this offseason because they did the whole, hey, we're going to get rid of Brian Ferentz thing. And I think if Kirk were just going to hang it up, I would not think that they would have done that. I would have think that would be a little more.
I think that was a forced move, and I don't think he was supportive of it, though. That's the thing.
Okay, well, fair, but I also think that if they would have said, hey, we're going to force this on you, maybe you just be like, well, screw it, then I'll just retire and we'll not.
Well, I've covered Kirk Ferentz before, so I will tell you that what he would do would be finish the year and then retire if that pissed him off that much, because he wouldn't quit in the middle of the season.
Okay, I mean that's a fair pushback. I was going to say my concern would be next year with Iowa, because it's going to be a new Big Ten, no more Big Ten West floofy schedule that you're going to get to puff up on 9 wins and go play in Indy for. So like that would be my concern, is that he's now had his son kicked out, and he's going to go through a year where they will probably struggle next year because the schedule is going to get tougher. And then that may be the point where he's like, hey, I don't want to deal with this. Like, you can have fun playing Oregon and Ohio State and Michigan more often.
What's something to think about is, like, his son didn't have to quit at that point. His son's still coaching the rest of the year. So Kirk could just continue coaching as long as his son can continue coaching.
Yeah. No, I mean, all fair points.
It's on the table is all I will say. With that being said, Chris Kleiman would be at the top of their list. I don't know whether he would take it. I know some people think he might, think about it at least. What I will say is Mark Stoops would be at the top of their list too, and he almost already left Kentucky.
The story on that was hilarious. Like that Mark Stoops was telling people that he was leaving, and that like that was basically done. But A&M saw the like Texags reaction, was like, oh well, we can't do this, so let's go hire the other 7-5 coach from a basketball school in blue, and they got Mike Elko. So
it wouldn't surprise me if Mark Stoops is the next time.
Go ahead, Cole. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say I think Ferentz will probably hang on for another year. I will say he seemed very emotional after the game and his post-game interview, about getting to 10 wins, but I've seen him be emotional a couple different times this year. Maybe that's just what he is, DY. You've covered him. He's maybe an emotional guy.
They compare him to Dick Vermeil because he cries so much.
Yeah, all right. I would just say, like, I don't think Chris Kleiman wants to coach more than maybe 5 more years. This goes on and on. If Kirk Ferentz hangs on another year, like I have a hard time seeing Chris Kleiman jump for a new job and start over with Gene Taylor just signing the extension as the athletic director at Kansas State. I don't think there's a large reason for worry. I would expect Chris Kleiman to remain at K-State.
Well, so the other thing I was going to ask is, like, if because we know that he was incredibly upset after that game. The last time you had a season-ending game like this that was like really upset and like there were glaring problems with coaching, it was Texas, where it was like that was the game that got Courtney Messingham fired, that got his childhood friend fired because of how poorly things went there. Now, this is not about Joe Klanderman being on the chopping block at all. I want to be clear about that. I think Joe Klanderman's done a pretty darn good job as K-State's defensive coordinator. But are there other staff changes that could happen from this? Because there is a precedent for this. You have a season-ending loss where stuff goes so terribly wrong on one side of the ball that it caused a big shakeup that then vaulted K-State to the next level. That Texas game sucked, but it was a necessary evil for a Big 12 championship. So, throw that out there.
One, I don't know of anything that's going to happen or will happen. No, I've heard no rumblings of it. Two, I think Joe Klanderman is safe, and I think he deserves to be safe. Three, that kind of loss does typically result into some kind of shuffling.
Yep. No, I think Chris Kleiman was mad enough. I think there could be a change or two on the staff.
But it shouldn't be Klanderman.
I don't think it's going to be any sort of coordinator type. I would say this, guys, like I think continuity is a good thing to a point, but I also think maybe fresh perspectives and change also sometimes can be a good thing. So,
yeah. I mean, it was a great thing when they did it with the offense. It was a great thing when they did it with the strength coach and got True in there. Like these moments generally have been pretty good for K-State when Chris Kleiman has opted to do that. So, look, we'll keep our eye on it, and obviously you'll hear about it on the show as things move forward. I would just reiterate again, like, so just a little bit of Klanderman talk on like social and the boards and stuff. Like, I think Joe Klanderman's been a good defensive coordinator in K-State. Like, they basically, do they still have like a top 4 defense in the Big 12 this year? At least top half defense in the Big 12 this year?
Probably points per drive, especially because you had taken the TCU and Houston games into account that really inflated one way. So you'd like to see a little bit more consistency, but you could say that about Colin Klein. I mean, think about the offensive laid a couple duds this year too. So
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, points per drive, they were in the upper half of the Big 12. The pass efficiency defense heading into Saturday was actually the best that it had been in like 12 years for K-State's defense. That probably changed with Brock Obecht completing 230 yards worth on 12 passes. So
that's the funny part, though. I was worried about Rocco Becht coming into the game, and his numbers look crazy, but he didn't really have to do that much. He just kind of would throw the ball 5 yards and let somebody run 70, to run up the stats. So Rocco Becht didn't really hurt you that much.
I think the farthest through the year was the one to Jaden Higgins. So it's actually a pretty nice throw. That one did probably travel about 25 yards through the air, but the others, the quick slant to beat Siegel for the 70-plus yard touchdown to Noel was probably 10 yards through the air, and then the Jalen Noel one was a check down 5 yards, and he goes 82 yards or whatever it was on that play. Jalen Noel in his career, guys, was averaging under 10 yards per reception. He had 3 catches for 160 yards.
That's 53.3 yards per catch for those of you keeping track at home. And on that, an appropriate way to end this edition of Three Ma. Thanks to our friends at Holiday Distillery. Get your Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon, your 360 vodka. We appreciate our friends at Homefield Apparel, homefieldapparel.com, promo code Black Friday to get 20% off. Make sure that you do that. Thank you to Nick Springer behind the scenes. For Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for listening to another Three Ma. Talk to you soon.